Hello, sumo fans.
Hello again.
We're back. It was a great tournament to end the year.
It was a true joy.
First and foremost, congratulations to Taka Keisho.
Yay! I was writing him off a couple tournaments ago, and I have to say it's just because I love him so much that I'd rather say, you're never going to win again, in the hopes that he will win again. So, it's reverse psychology. It's kind of silly and whatever, but I'm thrilled.
This was a victory on a lot of levels. We'll get into the details once we get into the Banzuke, but well-earned, I would say, and definitely a herald of things to come, because a lot of people are immediately talking about his Yokozuna run. Again, more on that later.
Yes, definitely.
So we're going to start at the top. We're going to start with my pick for the winner, Hakuho, who won a whopping 0 victories. A somewhat surprise withdrawal. It was sort of a surprise in the fact that he seemed like he was doing fine. Kind of not a surprise because there's a lot of a difference between showing up for some practice fights and then doing it for 15 days.
Definitely. And, there might be politics. There might not be. You never know. Hakuho is known to play games, period. I mean, he could even be playing mind games with the rest of the people in the tournament. Like, oh, I'm going to be there. No, I'm not. Just so they're always on their toes. You just don't know with Hakuho. But he'll be back. And when he's back, I think he's going to be throwing everybody all over the place.
Yeah, we thought this was the tournament that was going to be his back with a vengeance. So whatever vengeance he had in store for November is going to be in there in January. I don't even get to January yet. There's a lot to talk about in November.
Yes.
Speaking of January, Kakuryu, the other Yokozuna, another no-show for the whole tournament. This one was a little bit more expected because it seemed like he was still having issues with injuries. January is going to be his final chance.
Yeah. Now, there was a little bit of talk where it was November was going to be his chance, and then all of a sudden his Oyakata backed down and said, no, he's got a little more time. I just saw today that both Hakuho and Kakuryu got a warning. A little bit less than the most severe warning that you can get, which basically said you guys aren't living up to your Yokozuna standards, and therefore you need to try harder, and it's all passive-aggressive talk, which is really aggressive for Japanese. I'm very interested to see how Hakuho responds, but my guess is that Kakuryu, he does it or he's done.
Do or die. He's running out of rope. Now, thankfully, Kiseno Sato's, 8 tournament hiatus sort of set a standard that they get to lean on, at least for the short term. But regardless, he wasn't here. We didn't know how good or bad his sumo was because he didn't compete. But somebody whose sumo we did know is good is the Major Ozeki Taka Keisho.
Woo!
There's a lot to talk about. I'll let you take the lead on this one because Taka Keisho is claimed by you.
Ah, yes, he is. Okay, so going into this tournament, I knew he was looking really strong. It sounded like the practice sessions were going well. You never know with a practice session, but he just seemed like he was really focused and really motivated, and September looked pretty good, so I had high hopes, but I really didn't know he was going to perform the way that he did. 13-2, and that second loss comes on, in the final match or the final day, so he very well could have won 14-1, and things have gone a little differently. Best start he's had in his career. He went, I don't remember when he got his first loss, but I think he got all the way up to his Kachikoshi.
At least 8, yeah.
Yeah, he got 8 before he had his first loss to Tobizaru, which, hats off to Tobizaru. He's an unpredictable guy, and, he pulled a fast one on Taka Keisho, and he fell for it. But let's get into the drama of this a little bit. Taka Keisho's been an Ozeki now for 2 years, and nothing was going his way. He would get injured, he makes it to a playoff, and then he gets injured in the playoff, and it was just always so uncertain. And all of a sudden in this tournament, and we'll get more into this, but Asanoyama's out, Shodai's out, Terunofuji's coming back with a vengeance, and really it was Taka Keisho's tournament to show I belong here. I am the Ozeki. I can win more than one tournament. That's sort of a thing that's happened lately is A guy wins a tournament, becomes Ozeki, and never wins again. It's very strange. So first you have just the fact that he had to be the top guy. No Yokozunas, only Ozeki. This is your time. On top of it all, we all saw the epic destruction that Terunofuji put on him.
Yeah.
In that final match. I jumped off the couch. I was like, oh, that is like devastating. And I have to admit, I thought there's no way he's winning the next match. That was just so mentally damaging. He's going to be fragile. And he came back out in that dohyo and said, "You're out, buddy. See ya." Just, it's amazing. It's amazing to have that kind of fortitude where he didn't let that devastation impact 20 minutes later.
It's all of that, yes. There was the resolve. The things that worked for Takakeisho this tournament that seemed to push him a little bit over was a certain consistency that he was always struggling with. Hard to tell if it was mental, if it was physical. I mean, when he was injured, you knew it was physical. But there was another thing that he did, which was the match with Kiribayama. And basically, Takakeisho's game plan is you push them until they go into orbit, and it works. And he always had problems whenever somebody got his belt. And day 3, Kiribayama gets his belt. And immediately you see the panic in Takakeisho's face. But then he pulls a throw, which everybody was like, what did he just do? So Takakeisho's learning things. And the other big thing, and this goes into the consistency, is a level of focus. Now, he lost his focus with Tobizero, which is why he lost. But in a lot of the more prolonged fights, Takakeisho had the tendency to get impatient and to get risky.
Yeah.
And here, there were longer fights that he stuck with the game plan. Now, against Terunofuji, I think that was just nerves in the first match. And really goes to show how strong his resolve is, that he was able to regroup after getting 400 pounds of angry sumo on his face.
Yeah.
So, very good showing for Takakeisho. And also, he won it in a way that shows that it wasn't a fluke.
And that's really important because there's so much pressure on the current Ozeki because the whole change in the guard is still happening. It's practically here. And they want that guy who's going to be Yokozuna. And they put an awful lot into Asanoyama. He was supposed to be the great next hope. And they just kind of passed right over Takakeisho. I mean, I was even watching the NHK preview. And Hiro's like, let's talk about Takakeisho. And Murray's like, no, let's not. And I'm like, wow. Like, you know, his height is a disadvantage for him. And the fact that he's quote-unquote one-dimensional. That kind of drives me crazy when people say that. This was a time for him to show, look, I've got one really strong thing that I do, but I'm adding in things like the throw, like the parrying, all these different... The parrying's always in there, but the way he's parrying, you don't know necessarily where it's going to come from. This is what you have to do if you want to be Yokozuna. Be very, very good at what you're good at, but then always be able to pull out something from the bag of tricks. I think he's finally learning how to do that. I don't know if he'll be Yokozuna after next tournament. With Hakuho back, that's the real test. Can Takakeisho beat Hakuho the way he beat Terunofuji?
Be interesting to see.
Because if he can't, there's not going to be a Yokozuna promotion anytime soon.
Until little Hakuho retires.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, this is the best we got.
Yeah. Bag of Tricks, I think, is a running theme this tournament as well. Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely be going back to that, a few things. After Takakeisho is the previously mentioned Asanoyama, who apparently got injured on day 1, bad luck, and then he got spiked by Terunofuji on day 2, Woohoo. And then he was gone. So with Asanoyama, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that he came to perform, and what we were talking about, the Tale of Three Ozeki, that he had the chip on his shoulder and he was out to prove himself, like that was all well and good, and then he just legitimately got injured. That being said, hard to tell with Asanoyama if he was pulled out because he just saw the reason. I feel like that's doing him a little dirty.
Well, I've always had a different feeling about Asanoyama than the majority, and it could be my complete bias because of how much I love Takakeisho. He's just not tough enough in my mind. He's got the body, he's got the skill, he's got the power, but I don't think he has the mental game. I think the pressure gets to him too easy, and I think he overanalyzes. He chose not to do the practice bouts. He chose to practice on his own, which, fine. Whatever works for you. But there's a part of me that wonders, is it, I don't want to show my techniques, I want to surprise him, and then you get hurt. Like, I think you should take as much practice as you can, no matter how good you are. Even if you get pancaked, oh well. And I see Takakeisho not afraid to get embarrassed. I feel like Asanoyama is, and if he's going to have that fear, he's never going to make it any further. I expect him to clear this injury. It didn't look like it was a dangerous one, and I expect him to stay Ozeki. But the question is he got a little bit of Mitakeyumi syndrome there?
It's just possible.
I heard it's catching.
Heard it's catching. So next up, another tragic injury from Shodai, who got 3 days, or got 3 wins, 4 days, and then was gone on the 5th. His was, he just turned his ankle, all 400 pounds of him on that ankle, and it was gone. Shodai, I am not really worried about him, like he'll be back.
Yeah.
And it's just super bad luck, and this is just the kind of thing that will happen to everybody. Now, there was some talk about him, like, maybe he should have been in a place where he didn't put himself in this position, blah, blah, blah. Bygones be bygones. I don't even know if Katoban is going to affect Shodai at all.
Yeah, will that actually put any pressure on him? Shodai, I think he was a little surprised by how much tougher the competition gets, just physically. I don't think mentally he was, like, oh, what is this? Mozeki, no big deal. But I feel physically, based on the comments he was making in the practice tournament, which you can get all the details on Chris Sumo, he was talking like, wow, this is tough. And I think maybe he overtrained, and that's why it was so easy to hurt your ankle. I agree with you that he's going to be fine, because I don't think that he puts as much pressure on himself as Asanoyama does. I think if he gets himself nice and healed and he just takes his time, he can beat anybody. He's always had that talent. He just couldn't put it all together, to win tournaments. So I think he'll be okay. Do I think he's a future Yokozuna? No, I do not. But he could surprise me.
Not in his current state.
Not in his current state, yes. He needs to level up.
Yeah, evolution.
I think Asanoyama could very well become a Yokozuna if he gets out of his own head. So there's a different view of these two guys. Each has what the other one lacks.
Yes, it's true. If you took Asanoyama, Shodai, and a roll of duct tape, you would have a Yokozuna.
That's right.
Next up, we have, going into the Sanyaku, Mitakeyumi. 7 and 8, which is... It's both better and worse than I thought he'd do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
He did seem to run out of steam around day 9. Because he was doing pretty well, not winning all of them, but at least good enough to make a good showing of it.
Looking strong.
It seems like he was injured. The way the commentary was talking, it seems like he was injured. He didn't seem to have the momentum going. Who knows with Mitakeyumi, but he's out of luck. There's one thing I do want to talk about with Mitakeyumi, and it was in his fight with Tobizaru. Because Tobizaru, who's just a dear to watch, we'll get in him later. It's darling. But he beat Tobizaru, he throws him out, and Tobizaru takes a little bit of a tumble, and Mitakeyumi offers the hand. And then Tobizaru accepts the hand, and then the crowd claps. Now, trying to read into this as a white boy in New York State, it seems that was kind of a big deal. Now, I don't know if Tobizaru and Mitakeyumi are like in neighbor stables or how any of that stuff works out, but 9 times out of 10, you check to make sure the guy didn't break his leg, and then you just go back and stand.
Yeah.
And also props to Tobizaru for accepting the hand, because usually you just offer the hand, you're like, you're all right, and then they do the, I'm good. So I saw that, and I was just like, there's this human side of Mitakeyumi now. I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, well, if you see his mom in the crowd, I mean, she's quite the energetic, enthusiastic mom. And you don't necessarily see that in Japan because, everybody's a little bit more stoic. But she's, he might get his heart from her. She's quite enthusiastic, brings the whole crowd. They're cheering, they got their signs. Yeah, Mitakeyumi, he probably was injured. I do wonder, I've heard these rumors, I don't know the truth, that he doesn't train hard enough. So he probably was injured, and maybe he also lost some steam, because COVID's really messing with the way things have been. And
this is true.
If you don't have motivation when things are normal, how much harder is it to train when you don't have people pushing you?
It's true.
So it could be that too. I mean, he didn't look terribly beat up, but he definitely wasn't putting in the effort at the end. Like he was afraid of hurting a knee, or he just knew he was done. Maybe we'll table him again. You know, maybe he's going to come back in the new year differently. The new year seems to spark something in people, and it's always a little wacky. But at this point, it doesn't look like he's ever going to get to Ozeki.
Career Sanyaku. Not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing.
But we did want up there. I need to emotionally distance myself just for a little bit.
Just for a little bit.
Until the hope comes back.
That's right.
Next up, we have Takanosho, who breaks the Sanyaku curse, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Almost every person who goes up to Sanyaku the first time, they just ping-pong all the way back down. 8-7, he got it. And I think he's well-earned. You've brought up in the past how Takanosho and Takakeisho are training partners, and that is definitely an iron sharpens iron kind of a scenario. It is interesting to watch Takanosho because he has the power to knock anybody out on any given day, but the consistency and just the timing of it is just a little off. So he'll run into somebody and they'll just go flying off the dohyo one day. The next day he comes in, some more wily veteran, they're able to absorb his tachiai and flip him down. And just the fact that he got 8-7 at Sekiwake for me is a really good sign, because he's somebody who's only going to get better.
Yeah, he's a little rough around the edges, but it's exactly what you said. Like, he just needs some more time to develop his craft. If he's strong enough to get an 8-7 right now, when he does develop his craft, when he does figure out this is what I'm going to do, who is going to stop him? And he can't fake Takakeisho, so go ahead, do as best as you...
Only faced him on day 15.
That's right,
They're in the playoff!
And how long has it been since that's happened? We got to look that up some point. When is the last time that stablemates had to face each other for a tournament win?
In the top division.
In the top division.
Not sure. I think that might have happened in the lower ranks relatively recently, but...
That won't be happening to Hakuho anytime soon.
Unfortunately not. Ugh, sadness.
Sorry to bring it down.
But it's fine. They're bringing themselves down. They don't need our help.
That's right.
Next up, we have the one and only Terunofuji. 13-2. The only reason that he didn't win was because he lost the playoff. Terunofuji has been an absolute joy to watch. His power, his dominance. It's ever since Tochinoshin lost the Tochinoshin spirit. Still doing good, we'll get to him. But we have not had that kind of Herculean strength on display. And then Terunofuji comes back and brings it to it. Anybody who can lift Hokutofuji up off the ground,
like it's nothing,
and then just no sell it on the way back. Oh boy, we've got a lunker here.
I didn't know anything about him. I came into sumo too late. He was already way down, and everybody sort of talked about, hey, he's got to come back, and I didn't know much about him. I'm very impressed by his power. I was shocked to see him just picking people up and throwing them out of the ring. It is nice to see a power guy again. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for him to fight Hakuho.
It's going to be good.
They've got a history that I never got to see. And Hakuho's on the way down. And Terunofuji, he's somewhere. He's on the way up, but he's not a uninjured man. So you never know what you're going to get from him. But, that last match, he really, really made a statement when he crushed Takakeisho.
That was a statement. He, in a way, the way it panned out, Terunofuji would disagree with me. But the way that it panned out with Terunofuji winning the last day and Takakeisho winning the cup was sort of the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Because he got the money, and he got the recognition of winning. But in the end, it was Takakeisho's cup. But Terunofuji, in his interview, I mean, he was pretty devastated. He wanted it real bad.
He was hungry for it.
But just picture what a Teruno Fuji in January is going to look like. When you're that close to getting the cup and you're on the way back to Ozeki and you know if you win the cup this time, you're going to be Ozeki again. He's going to be a monster. And it's going to be beautiful. Cannot wait for January. It's going to be such a rough Christmas. I know, right? Duh, December. Who needs December?
I don't need December. I need sumo. Next up, Takayasu. Another good story. And this is one of my favorite parts of this basho is that so many positive stories. A few negative, but also some people who lost still won in a way.
Way more positive this time than we've been seeing lately.
And Takayasu, 8-7, got his Kachikoshi as Kamusubi on the last day. And he's returning to his old self. And that power, that technique, the good footwork, it's all sort of coming together for him again. He still has some issues. There's got to be some lingering whatever that's just got to be there. I think back pain. I think backs are tough because they never really heal. But with that being said, like you said, he seemed like he was back to form. So if there's any way for him to sort of get the back into a decent place, I think we're going to see him come back. Possible. Seeing him, there's the two things that we want from Takayasu that we're rooting for him. One is to get back to Ozeki, and two is to get that cup. And a performance like this is how he gets there. And also, it's worth noting that one of the best matches in the tournament was Teruno Fuji and Takayasu. And even though Takayasu didn't win it, it was such just old school power. The both of them are grabbing and grunting and smacking each other, and it was... Oof.
I felt like I was back in 2017 again.
Oh, man.
It was a beautiful thing to watch. And since he did go toe-to-toe with him, it shows you that he can elevate his sumo with the right opponent.
Mm-hmm. It does help for him to get psyched up like that. Next up, we're down to Megashira and Kiribayama, who did not have a good time with it. 3-12.
You called this a little too spot on, John.
A little. He got outclassed. Now there's something, the secret sauce with him was just a little off. Now, there's a couple of flukes, like with Takakeisho, that everything went his way and then it didn't. But there were a couple of things that he was doing right in September that weren't working out for him in November. And everybody had his number and they were just punching the ticket. And he just got run out. I'm wondering if maybe Kakuryu wasn't able to help him, or just maybe something was off mentally. Maybe he had some injury that wasn't known about.
It seemed like something was off. He wasn't himself. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah.
That's not the Kiribayama I expected. I expected him to lose. I expected him to have a hard time, but 3-12. Looking pretty lackluster at the end, like just people tossing him around and everything. Something wasn't quite right, and hopefully it's a one-off. Mm-hmm. You know, you take your beat down in Megashira 1, you learn from it, you come back, and you make Sanyaku the next time.
Yeah, and Kiribayama is still... Now, he's been up here before. He went down, he back up and down. It's just part of the process. Sort of a downer moment, but for somebody like Kiribayama who's still getting his teeth cut, it's not... I don't see it as a big problem. I just see it as part of the process.
Yeah. So
next up, this man, Waka Takakage, almost made me eat my words.
Yes,
he came close. 7-8. I was begging on him to eat dirt, and it almost turned it around on me. This is an example of somebody who, even though he lost, he won. Because 7-8, technically a losing record, but getting 7 wins at your first chance at Megashira 1 West, and the matches he lost were still pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, it's not to dump on Kiribayama, but some of Kiribayama's matches were pretty one-sided.
It didn't look like he belonged where he was.
No, but Waka Takakage was scrapping, and something that seems to be consistent with these new up-and-comers is that they have this fearlessness to them, that they will just go head-to-head with anybody.
They're not intimidated by your rank or who you're supposed to be. It's like, I'm the new hotness, so back off. And he channeled that.
Very good. More to come from him. Like, the 7 and 8, I don't see him really moving far enough down from not to be where he is in terms of matchmaking for next tournament. So, expect him to go up against everybody again, and then that.
There's the new everybody's.
We gonna be interesting.
The returnees. Maybe he'll eat dirt then.
Yeah, well,
we'll see.
Everybody eats dirt to Hakuho, or do they?
Yeah, it's the
if you want to beat Hakuho, fight him the first time.
That's right. He might actually be the guy who gets a gold star because Hakuho hasn't seen him.
Oh man. January. Anyway, gotta keep going. Making sure 2 East no show. That 7 and 8 is a salvage operation. He almost had another no show. Kind of an no, but he got his stuff together. He definitely has the spirit. We always knew he had the will, but it's the consistency issues for an show. The chains and the tachi seems to help him a little bit, but not really enough to produce good results. But 7 wins is still good up here. The same what I said to Waka Takakage does apply to Onosho, but Onosho, the consistency wasn't quite there.
And it's something he's going to have to figure out at some point. He is still quite young. He's still much younger than most of the people on here. He's the same age as Takakeisho. So when he's like 26, he might have it figured out by then. Maybe he'll figure it out sooner.
That's a good point.
He's got to get comfortable in who he is. I think that's what the feeling I get from him. I can't obviously know what's going on in his head. But it seems like he's making all these adjustments all the time instead of just doing one thing right and then improving upon that. You know, he's messing with his footwork, messing with his tachi, doing this, doing that. And that's great to get a couple of wins because he's got a natural talent. He's got that spirit you talked about. He's just got to find what works and just make it happen. And he's got time. He's young. I think he'll do it if he can stay healthy.
He's got this whole chunk right here, like the first 4 or 5 people, that whole chunk, it's all this potential. So, Onosho, we're rooting for you. Next up, I'm also rooting for Daisho, the next guy up. And
your dark horse pick.
My dark horse pick. And so, not only am I happy that he did 10 and 5, but I feel like me picking him to win in September wasn't so ill-fated because he's back, and really this silenced the doubt of that there was ever anything wrong. And I call him the scrap king in my notes because he will draw belt people into slap fights. And
all of a sudden it's like a brawl.
It's a brawl.
Back alley.
The only time he had any sort of trouble were against people who could absorb punishment. Like Takara Fuji, who we'll get to in a little bit. But everybody else, if you're with Daisho, you better get a broken bottle because it's going to be a fight.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's nice to see him come back and really show what he can do. He might make it back into Sanyaku. I don't know, though. Sometimes they're real shifty about this stuff. He might take Kiribayama's spot.
There's going to be a whole thing we could talk about how the Banzuke is going to run. There's about 20 different ways you can roll those dice.
Which we'll get to discuss, in the preview what actually did happen.
Uh-huh.
Banzuke comes out on Christmas Eve, which is an interesting tradition.
Huh.
Yes. Every year on Christmas Eve it comes out. Interesting, huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I like it.
So, Merry Christmas. Here's your Banzuke.
Next up, Kagayaki, who was 5 and 10. Not that good, but there's a lot of people up there who were hungry. Also, I think Kagayaki had the unfortunate circumstance of fighting all the Ozeki before they injured out. There's a couple of people. He had to
fight everybody.
Yeah, so he had the murderer's row, and then some people around him didn't have quite as long a row. For Kagayaki, he seemed pretty good at absorbing punishment. And I noticed that because he's just so big, he's harder to move, and he's pretty good at just sort of staying calm in the moment. But the easiest way to beat Kagayaki seemed to be when you were fast and decisive on the Tachi. There's a lot of people messing with their Tachi these days, so that's probably why he has the 5 and 10.
Yeah, I think Shodai influenced everybody because his is so unorthodox, and yet you can get to Ozeki with that. And everyone's like, well, why don't I give it a shot? I think Kagayaki these are just impressions, once again. I have no idea. He might be an overanalyzer himself. And I don't know. It seems to me, it feels like he's thinking when he's in the ring. And I think that he's got a lot of tools where if you just let that go a little bit, just a little bit, he'd win more matches. You know, it works real well against someone like Enho, where you have to be keeping an eye on everything he's doing. But I think with some of the other guys, they're just going to plow into him and knock him out, and he just needs to stop tweaking so much. But we'll see. We'll see. I think I'm going to make a prediction that we're going to see something new from him in the new year.
That's a good take. New Kagayaki.
Yes.
New Kagayaki, new year. Interesting. He that's an interesting perspective I don't think I've noticed, but he keeps eyes on things. He's
got that laser beam focus on where you are. And the only person I see where it's like the absolute best thing you need to do that with is Enho. But all these big guys, it feels like he's off a second. Like, oh, I'm going to do, and then he's out. Mm-hmm. So I think, I don't know, I'm going to prepare for a new version of Kagayaki in 2021.
Interesting. Next we have Okinomi, who's already the new version in a way. He was 6-9, but I feel that the 6-9 doesn't really tell the whole story in this case.
Not at all.
A lot of his matches, like some of the ones he won and some of the ones that he lost, he showed some superior technique, some ring sense, that veteran's knowledge that you get at that when you've been doing it for this long. So even though Okinomi didn't really do too well, I feel like Okinomi's still in a good place, and we've not seen the last of him.
He surprised me. I had sort of written him off in the last tournament. I'm like, he's an old guy. He's just going to ride off in the sunset. No. He's very strong, and he's very smart. And if anything, age has just slowed him just a little bit. He might need to do some tweaking, get a little craftier, maybe. Maybe that's something you do in old age. But he's still got it. He has still got it, and I'm not going to bet against him. I think he could surprise us.
Yeah, who knows what Okinomi's is going to bring. Because he'll go low enough that he's not going to be facing a lot of those big guys. So he can get some double-digit wins if we're not paying too close attention.
And he might be back in Sanyaku. I mean, I guess that was not a fluke. I thought it was. I was wrong.
We'll see. So, speaking of getting back to Sanyaku,
woo!
My boy Hokuto Fuji,
11-4.
He's just felt so good to watch him go. He's now I'm calling him the Iron Man. He had at least 4, if not 5, huge endurance matches, including the one with Takara Fuji. Sorry, I'm looking down like not Tobizaru. Yeah, and that the two of them have this huge slobber knocker, and it turns into a Torinaoshi, and they have to redo it. I'm like, oh my god!
Can you handle it?
So this was like peak Hokuto Fuji. I've never seen him this good because he had the power, but he wasn't so forward and top heavy that usually led to his downfall. He did some belt stuff, which I did not see coming. And he seemed to have been revitalized. Maybe there's something going on. And if Hokuto Fuji can keep fighting like this, then I can stop caring about Mitakeumi.
Yeah, you got somebody new.
I got a new horse.
I have to say, Hokuto Fuji switching to the belt technique was genius. Because he's a very powerful slapper. And so, he goes all in for everything. Now, if he's got belt techniques, too, people are going to have to be very cautious when they approach him. They don't know if he's going to blast him out of the ring or toss him out of the ring. Mm-hmm. You had that versatility, and he was pretty good at the belt. It wasn't like, let me just try it like Takekeisho. It's like, oh, that worked. He looked like he was pretty good, so watch Hokuto Fuji. He might be the dark horse we didn't even know existed. Yeah,
I was
knew.
I was on the Hokuto Fuji train, but I didn't. It's not like I didn't care if he won or lost, but when he started getting pounded, I'm just like, he died the way he lived, 100%. Exactly. So I wasn't. So seeing him now winning like this, I'm like, hey, the Mets winning again? What's going on here?
Bonus.
Oh, and now To be fair, we'll see what happens next tournament. Hokutofuji is going to be tangling with the everybody, so it's quite possible that once everybody's back and they're hungry, that he's going to, be taking a trip to the dirt again. But just such a great moment to be a Hokutofuji fan.
Well, just think about Hakuho and him fighting, and Hakuho doesn't expect the belt grab.
Well.
Now Hakuho is either going to make him pay for it, or who knows?
Maybe Hakuho will do one of those I won but smiling because he knew he got away with it wins.
Yeah,
that'll be a win for Hokutofuji even if he loses.
Just to get one of those.
Yes. So, next up, somebody who also won despite losing, Tobizaru, who leapfrogs up after almost winning, and we're like, oh, he's going to get pummeled back down. But hangs with the rest of them. And now, the majority of people saw right through his bag of tricks, and he started doing the hit and shift and the pushing things, with one very notable exception.
The biggest notable exception.
But it was quite interesting to see him work, and that he kept his confidence, he kept that mobility, even though it got him into the stands a few times. Also, something that's interesting is that he has a consistently good record against pusher-thruster types. So if you grab his belt, you could do what you did with Terunofuji, literally lift him up like a child and walk him out, which Terunofuji bless. But
at least he didn't, move his legs like Endo did.
He did accept the fate. But props to Tobizaru for a great show of it.
Yeah, he really embarrassed Takakeisho. That's the first thing I'm going to say. I mean, he pulled the move Takakeisho did the day before on him. I'd like to say that Tobizaru is kind of like a comedian. First of all, it's like he punked Takakeisho. I was like, wow, I can't believe he just did that. He has no fear. He's not afraid to try. And after everything that happens, he's got a smile on his face or a wink, or he's moving his arms in a crazy way. I mean, he is a character. And he's strong. And I see this as him testing his limits. What can I get away with these guys? Because I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to go down. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm just going to see what happens. And I think that 6 and 9, he might have learned some things that are going to be, only Takakeisho is going to be yeah, I don't mess with him. I'm going to take him real serious. Everyone else, oh, whatever. And then he's going to, he might be the next guy with 11.
We'll see. If nothing else, it shows that last tournament wasn't a fluke. And also, he's going to be a joy to watch because win or lose, it's going to be something going on. Yeah.
You just keep an eye on him and his facial expressions. And, I half expect him to do cartwheels back into the dressing room.
You might. Next up, Megashira 5 East, Myogiryu, 4 and 11. He got pushed around. So it's weird because Myogiryu, nothing really changed with the way he was fighting. It's just everything else moved around him.
I agree with that.
And that just nothing that Myogiryu did, I looked at as oh, there's a problem. It's more just he would be up against somebody who's just I gotta get this. And the fighting spirit just burned within them, and Myogiryu was just the person in their way.
Yeah. He was sort of like a background character.
No. It felt weird.
It did. I'm sure it feels very weird for him to be in this position where he can school some people, but he also can get schooled. And he comes from Saitama Sakai, so he's part of, that prestigious class of sumo wrestlers, and I have to wonder if retirement's been floating around in his head.
He still got
it, but I'm sure this was not a tournament that he felt that great about.
No. I mean, this could be the oh no show,
It could be.
So we'll give everybody credit, and also, Kirabayama got slammed, but he'll be back. We don't want to worry about him.
No.
So, Myogiryu, he still got it. There's enough potential in there that there's no red flags. So next up we have Koto Shoho, 8 and 7 at his highest rank of 5 West, who is impressing everybody. The announcers are just look at this young guy go, and he's the novelty, and honestly he's earned it. And all of his wins have been through technique, and again that fearlessness that this new crop has.
Yes. They're the new generation, and they're not afraid of you, and maybe part of that is because the old generation isn't as strong. They've seen sort of the cracks. But it's impressive to see a young guy just go for it. If he's got nerves, you can't see them. And he's going to be battling... Him and Wakataka Kage are just... they're going to be the two guys. What are we going to see 5 years from now? Are those going to be the two next class of Ozeki in the not-too-distant future?
It's promising. Promising. Lot to promise.
It does make me think of Tomokaze.
Tomokaze will be that back. Like, we're going to blink. And then we're going to get Tomokaze. We're going to get Abi.
Yes.
They're just going to be like, oh, I missed you.
And it's going to throw all our predictions out the window because who knows what they're going to do.
Oh, goodness. There's some revitalization. They're good things. Also good things from Takara Fuji, who we've mentioned like 2 or 3 times already. So, 9 and 6 does not tell the story at all.
Not even close.
He was in contention for the tournament. The last, 3 of those last 6 were all in the final days when the momentum sort of went out. But he has gone through some sort of a revival. And he was strong when he needed to be strong. He was mobile when he needed to be mobile. And you just could not do anything to him.
Well, he's the picture, he's the elder statesman, and he's the picture of calm sumo. You're not going to ever see him become a frantic guy, even if he's losing. He's always calm. He was training with Teruno Fuji, which gave him the extra strength. And I think if Takara Fuji keeps getting physically stronger, he is a force to be reckoned with because he is that calm guy who has the techniques, who is going to hang in there until the last minute. But that was also his downfall. He had that crazy epic match versus Hokuto Fuji. He had another epic match after that. And he probably doesn't have enough gas in the tank. That is something that age will get you on. Mm-hmm. You can be this great wrestler, but these guys are younger and they can hang in a lot longer.
Yeah.
But Takara Fuji, maybe we see a tournament like a Tamawashi. Maybe he gets the cup at some point. For
a while, it was going to be this one. And it was going to be him. It was, that midpoint was such a rush. But now, if there's one thing we take away from this tournament, there's a whole bunch. There's an hour and however long this is of takeaways. But the one thing to keep an eye on is this Takara Fuji. Because what's going to show up for him next? You don't know. You thought you knew him. He just said, here's a new book on me.
Yeah, I'm brand new and I'm in my second form and is there a final form? I'm looking forward to it. I hope there's a final form.
Up next, so speaking of Tamawashi, so he got 8 and 7, just barely scraped by with the Kachikoshi. Tamawashi, it's been interesting because before he'd be strong pusher thruster, but he'd have some tricks up his sleeve. And he'd do some shifts or he'd do some throws at the end. The entire tournament, if he won the Tachi-ai, he won the match. If he lost the Tachi-ai, he lost the match. And he seemed to win 8 Tachi-ais. And it was weird because there would be one match that he would, it would be a neutral Tachi-ai, or he'd sort of lose a Tachi-ai. He'd be doing all the same stuff and everybody would just be absorbing his power and pushing him out. And you're just like, oh, this is how he goes. And then the next day of the tournament, he just goes right in, just steamrolls some guy out of the ring. And you're like, whoa, he's still got the strength, but just not there. And
what's happening?
I don't know.
Yeah, all I can say is I have a big question mark. What did I just see?
Yeah, and so when I was doing the scores for this, I was like, oh, he did win. He did get a winning record. I was confused because the way he lost were in ways that an earlier Tamawashi would never lose.
Right, it felt like he got dominated.
Yeah.
But he scraped enough wins. I don't know. I think we're going to need a little bit more time to see, was this an off tournament? Was this the new him? I don't know.
He's fading out.
Right. Really, the next tournament will tell us where he's at. Mm-hmm. And he's got that record where he hasn't missed a tournament in X amount of days, so for him, it's going to be when he can no longer compete, he's done. I don't think he's going to wrestle beyond once his record is over. So, if he's at the end here, it could be that. It could be that he had just enough oomph to keep the record going, because maybe he's playing a live or die game with his career, too.
Quite possible. But he'll be around a little longer. He got 8 and 7.
See him in January.
I hope. Next up, somebody else I may have a new leash on. Tochinoshin, 9 and 6. Decent showing of it. He's evolving, but barely. So he still has some of his old tendencies. He'll go for the belt. If you panic him, he'll do a pull. There's way if you get him moving in certain ways. But he's starting to show some new life. He's doing things that don't involve the belt. In the match against Endo, Tochinoshin Endo are like this. But in the match with Endo, he won by avoiding belt sumo and doing everything he could to keep Endo off his belt. And these are things that Tochinoshin really hasn't done. And so the fact that he's getting this bag of tricks and he's expanding at least what we've seen or versus what he's known for tells me that maybe he's adapting to this new post-knee existence.
It's interesting because I was really railing on him in the last commentary and saying that I wanted him to do exactly this. So either he's bugged my house or or I saw something in the last tournament. He was sort of doing it in the last tournament, but then he was doing weird things like Hankas. But there was something slightly different. He was tweaking some things in the last tournament. Now he sort of went full tilt with it. And yeah, he's a strong guy. He doesn't have to pick you up and lift you to be effective. He's just got to... Here's an example where he does have to reinvent himself because his knees are so bad. This is a guy who needs to become a new Tochinoshin. I do think he can do it. I mean, he was pretty successful, 9 and 6. He is now the last Georgian from that great Georgian era left in sumo because Gagamaru retired.
Mm-hmm.
So, if he wants to have longevity and be that Georgian, represent his country, I mean, he's a hero back there. He can do it with this. I think he can stay around for a couple more years and maybe, I don't know if he'll ever get to Ozeki, but he might be able to challenge again. He's a pretty opposing fella.
Mm-hmm.
So pull out the bag of tricks and see what happens.
See if he can get revitalized. Now, his power isn't totally gone. There are a couple of matches that he did the lift. He did the lift. I was just like, he still got it. But we'll see with him. I was sort of like every time we see Tochinoshin, it's like this may be the last time. But then he started elbowing people in the Tachi. I'm like, okay, maybe this is a new. We'll see. I'm hopeful.
Well, he's got the Hakuho idea there. Let me throw a forearm. But also Terano Fuji, what I had heard from one of the commentators was he busted his knees by lifting people out, which he was doing. That's part of what caused his knee injuries. And he did it this time. But this might be the case with Tochinoshin. Just take a break from that a little bit. And then only use it when you have to. Because it shows you it is still there.
Yeah.
It's just your knees can't take it every single match.
Something to keep an eye on. In January, where we're going to be looking at everything.
There's going to be a magnifying glass.
Goodness. Oh, goodness.
All over the pixels on the screen.
I'm gonna need a bulletin board just to keep tabs and everything. So Endo next, 8 and 7 as well. Endo did what Endo does, which a weird inconsistency. I feel like now this could just be me, but it felt like in the past when Endo lost, it was just Endo hit the off switch, and there was a little bit of that in here. But it felt like there was a little bit more spirit in his sumo this time. Like when he lost, he was trying hard, and the thing didn't work out. Like against Tochinoshin, like I mentioned before, he was trying hell or high water to get that belt, and Tochinoshin just was too strong. So, I mean, first off, 8 and 7, Kachikoshi, good show. And if he keeps whatever momentum he built up here going, we may blink and he's back in Sanyaku. Then again, if Endo does what Endo does, then he'll be 7 and 8 next tournament.
There's just this, you could bracket it off, there's just this group of sumo wrestlers that have the skill, have power, I wouldn't say are super powerful, but they have the skill and they have the ability to win. and they're just so inconsistent you can't nail them down. It's like trying to nail Jell-O to a tree or something. So I can never predict what Endo's going to do, but that's also a good thing because, like you said, he could suddenly be the Endo I've never seen. He could be a Takanafuji and just, be in contention. I'd love to see him at least in contention for a tournament. I think he's too good not to be in contention. It's very strange.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Have him be in the race.
What would happen then? What level of Endo would we see if the cup was in sight? And what could he build off of that? I mean, you look at Shodai. Shodai sort of was down there for so long. Talented guy, just whatever. All of a sudden, when the cup was in sight, that's when he went up to the next level. Maybe that's all Endo needs. We might see something different.
Optimistic.
Yes.
Next up is Aoyama, Megashira 8 East, 6-9. He did what he always does. Him and Kaisei are doing this slow motion sumo these days.
Yeah. In
that it's people run rings around them, but if you get in their way, he's gonna blast you all the way off. He has a standard bag of tricks, some pulls, some pushes, some surprise belt grabs. He just seems to be slowing down, or he was just slower this time around, which is what happens. Yeah,
I think this is the slow decline. I think he can hang in for a while, but I don't see any improvement coming. I don't necessarily see crashing down into Juryo. I don't see that yet, but I think slow-mo sumo is also slow end sumo for him. Mm-hmm. There just doesn't seem to be that promise. It's been years now of watching him, and it feels different now than it did when we were watching him even a year ago.
Not as crisp. Mm-hmm. But the 6-9 means he'll be around at least 2 more tournaments, so he has a chance to right the ship. Next up, somebody else who needs to right their ship, Teretsuyoshi, 5-10. So here's another example of somebody who sort of lives off their bag of tricks, like Tobizaru does, but everybody knew Teretsuyoshi's game coming into this one, it seems. Everybody read the playbook.
Yes, everybody got a copy.
So every time Teretsuyoshi went down, it seems they read it and they were able to slap him down, get him away from the knee. I think when he was fighting Koto Shoho, the match was a second and a half. Because Teretsuyoshi goes in on Koto Shoho just reads it immediately and just pushes him down. And it was just, you just blunk and it was over. And that's sort of the story for Teretsuyoshi this time around.
It's strange because, yeah, he's a little guy, but he's not Enho little. And he does little man sumo, but he doesn't do it that well. He did when there was a certain point where he was, but that Ashitori leg pick was so special that he did on Asanoyama because it had such an impact. It seems kind of silly and foolish now if you're going to go for it 2 or 3 matches in a row. You're going to look silly. I think his head's all screwy. He needs to either get really, really focused and come up with a strategy, or he needs to just get out of his own head and try some stuff. Go to one extreme or the other. He's sort of living in Middletown, where it's I'm going to try a trick today. I'm going to try to go toe-to-toe. What are you doing? You're just a mess out there. And I think he's talented and he's strong, so he's just gotta talk to coach, see what he can give you for advice. I hope you're not an Abi and you're sneaking out all the time instead of training. Goodness.
I hope his bad boy persona is just all what we're imposing on him.
Right, that it's not reality. He's not actually out there with the Yakuza at night.
It's gonna be like Shoho's on. It's people think I'm mean.
I'm actually a really nice guy.
But he needs to get his stuff back. But I'm not afraid.
No, there's no fear there. It's just something's off, and you just fix it.
Mm-hmm. Go fix it. Next up, we have Tokushoryu, first Kachikoshi since winning in January, 8-7. He's made a home in the top division, I feel, because in January he was fresh in. He starts the trend of the lowest ranked people winning everything, which almost happened 3 times. We'll get to that in a little bit. But he is holding his own in the top division. I think we can look at him and say he's now a mainstay.
Yeah, and I didn't necessarily think he was going to be. I really thought January was a fluke. not a fluke like that he didn't earn it. He did earn it. But that was going to be the end of it. I put everything I had, I won this cup, and I'm going to tool around and eventually be in Jurio again. And no, he proved that he is a strong sumo wrestler. He is diverse. He's a bruiser. He got his nose busted really bad.
Ugh.
There was blood everywhere, and he came back and fought the next day. And I like him. He brings a nice presence to the dohyo where he's a big guy, but he's not brutal. He's tricky. He's a big guy who's got tricks. And he's powerful. I mean, it's really hard to knock him out of the ring.
Yeah, there are a couple of matches that people tried to outmuscle him, and he's just like, no.
You silly fool.
You silly fool. Did you see this book? But good to see him holding his own.
See what he does?
Yeah. I mean, he's won the tournament, so we can't say he can't do it.
Right.
So it's more of a what else you got in that bag?
Yeah, you got something else we don't know about?
That's it. So next up we have Koto Eko, who, despite being jacked again, was 6-9. Unfortunate. I feel like some of his matches that he lost were a bit of bad luck. And there's a few people that sort of like to just, the tides of fate were against them. But I think a lot of that also has to do with Koto Eko. Still relatively new. He's been here maybe a year. And so there's still a bit of learning for him. And last time we were talking, we were looking at Koto Eko, and like he started going up, and then it started to slow down. And we're like, he needs to get things moving. Now he's moving backwards. We're like, okay, now he definitely needs to.
It's go time now.
It's go time.
Yeah, he did look really good at first, and I thought, okay, he's gonna show what he's got, and then he just sort of faded out at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's probably really, possible that because he's newer in the game, he's got to figure sumo out. But, maybe there's some training issues too. Maybe he, being new, what's the endurance? Can you handle 15 days? How do you simulate that in training? Maybe over time he's going to get stronger. Maybe he's going to be like that 33-year-old who wins the cup. I don't know.
It's possible.
But I just see so much promise. So hopefully he rights the ship and, we get to have a different narrative for him next time.
Yeah, we'll see. He's a lot of, again, it feels like he wasn't really doing something wrong. It's just he was just on the wrong end of the fight.
Yeah.
And, luck is really only going to play so much in these things. Then again, we'll see what happens in January. Next up, we have Ryuden, who had 2 days of that same weird, gloomy, slow-down sumo that were like, oh, come on, Ryuden, figure something out. Then he starts doing this weird bounce tachi that it's like he's jumping on a seesaw or he's riding a horse.
He was rocking the first 2 days that he did.
It was it was crazy. And at first I was like, what the hell is he doing? And then he kept doing it from day 3 onwards. And it balanced itself out, but he's doing this shake, this little shimmy at the tachi. And whatever was in that butt shake of Ryuden's got him a 9-6 record.
Well, I'll say this. This is pure speculation on my part, but I'd love to hear an interview later on. His stablemate Shoboshi was part of the comic sumo team. So he'd go out there and do the comic sumo where you would do all the moves you're not supposed to do in sumo and make the audience laugh and everything else. There's just a part of me that says, was he channeling Shoboshi there? Like, you know what? Things aren't going my way. I'm just going to get a little silly up here in honor of my stablemate. Chris will find out if that's the case, but it certainly was very strange. It was deliberate. Sometimes things happen in sumo where you're like, that's strange. It was very, very deliberate and so off because that is just not how sumo goes. So this was a deliberate choice to do this. And it's like either he felt like being silly or he felt like faking his opponents out. Like, hey, let's see what you do with this. So I would love to know why he chose to do it.
It's a big mystery, but you can't argue with the results.
No, and 9-6.
It's not like he changed the way he fought, really. It's just that he had that gumption back. So, like, his grit, his belt techniques, his throwing, his pushing, like, everything that got him to Sanyaku before and that he sort of lost after the whole COVID mess, it seemed to come back a little bit.
Maybe he was loosening up. Like, he's such a stiff guy in some ways. Maybe that was a way to just be like, all right, shake it out. So, what we'll see in January if we get any more Cowboy.
If he just keeps doing that until he's done, I'm like, way to go, Ryuden.
Well, I'd love to see, like, a little step change with it. Like, maybe, like, kicks the leg out a little. Or, like, I would love for him to go full on crazy with this until the Gyojis yell at him. That's what I want to see.
He'll get a strongly worded letter from Chairman Hakaku. Cut that out.
In the middle of his match. Hakaku just walks up. Here you go.
Hands it over him.
If only.
Oh, goodness. Well, we've not seen everything yet.
No, we haven't.
Next up, we have Meisei, who 10 West, also 9-6. Kind of surprised on the 9-6 because it seemed that his losses were more of it brutal losses too. But
he hung in.
He hung in. So what Meisei has going for him is a good focus. And there's a few people. Kageyaki has the focus thing going on too. Mm-hmm. And that Meisei seems to have the ability to sort of just stay on target. And when you have a lot of people who are more these wily, jumping around, strafing types, having that kind of a focus seemed to have done him pretty well.
You have a note here. I'm pointing out that it's a note because I really like this note. At the whims of his opponent at times. And I really thought that was accurate. Sometimes it was like his opponent's got his number and you're done. And it was kind of shocking in the end that he wound up 9-6. Because he didn't look that good when he lost. And he looked okay when he won.
Yeah, it seemed that also a few of the times that he won, the enemy had momentum, and he just was able to capitalize on a mistake. I think he was fighting Yutakayama, and Yutakayama was beating him up all left and right, and then Yutakayama got a little bit too eager, and Meisei just said, that's your ticket home.
He's probably injured. I really think he is injured. That's not to say that's why he lost, but I feel like he's got more in him than he showed. So I hope he can recover in the next couple months. Like we say, everybody's injured, but, maybe if he gets in a better condition, we're going to see a different version of him. Yeah. Crossing my fingers on that.
The 9-6 won't put him in range of the big chunk up top, but it'll definitely put him in range of the people who are getting beat up by the people up top.
Right.
So Meisei may be having to hold his own against people who are trying to scrape a Kachikoshi. So that's going to be interesting to see where he ends up next tournament. Next up, we had Sadanomi, who was 5-10, and I was paying attention to him. He's a belt fighter. He's pretty good at it, but the thing is that the announcers mentioned something about a leg injury that was going on with him. I don't know if it's something he brought into the tournament or if this was something that he acquired along the way. It seemed that whenever Sadanomi squared off with people, if they weren't really good at the belt or if he had the advantage, he would win. But anybody who he went against, who knew what they were doing on the belt, he'd just get outclassed.
Yeah, that's interesting. If you've got a leg injury, the second somebody's got your belt, I mean, you're going backwards. Mm-hmm. And that's the worst thing with a lot of injuries is going backwards. You try to fight that, you're just going to snap something. So it would fit that the leg injury was an issue. He's going to drop down. He's not going to go to Jurio.
No.
He's going to drop down, and maybe that's a good thing for now. Maybe he needs a little time to recover and not fight some of the...
Yeah, last match, Sadanomi fought Ishiura, and that was probably a swap match. In that if Sadanomi lost against Ishiura, Ishiura would have been 9-6, and then Sadanomi would have been 4-11, which would have been more justification for Ishiura to go back up. Sadanomi won that by throwing Ishiura out like the trash. So Ishiura, if gets 8 wins in January, he's back. So not to rule Ishiura out, but Sadanomi's probably going to be in the danger zone come January.
Unless he can just sort of, get himself together. He's a wily veteran. If he's not too injured, he probably will get himself back together. These things take time to see where you're going.
Next up is the latest tragedy.
This was the tragedy of the tournament.
Yeah. So Enho was 3-12, and the summary of what happened to him is that a bunch of bullies beat him up and took his lunch money.
And they, practically killed him.
They practically killed him. I always joke with friends that when Enho wins, it looks amazing, but when it loses, it looks like child violence.
It surely does. There were times where he got beat so bad that I'm like, is he even going to be able to walk after that? He hit his tailbone off the top of the dohyo in one of the matches, and I just thought, oh, he's ripped in half.
He was battered.
Got hit in the face a bunch of times, people landing on him. It was painful, I'm sure, physically painful, but mentally it must have been just devastating.
It's weird. Enho has some sort of a disconnect in that his mind, his body, and his heart are all going in different directions. Mm-hmm. And so, he's still trying. He's still... it's weird because every time he went out there, he tried to do something different.
Yeah, he was not giving up.
He wasn't giving up, but he just kept getting beaten up anyway. What summarized the entire tournament for me was on the second day he faced Kaisei, and he does this crazy jump to literally leapfrog over Kaisei. And you can see, the idea is that he was going to jump over the guy in the tachi, get behind him and push him out. It was going to be great. And then Kaisei just swats him out of the air. His hands are these huge fly swatters.
It was pretty.
And the slow-mo, you can basically see Enho bending in half on his waist from the force of Kaisei hitting him. It's that's the tournament right there. Enho trying something extraordinary and then just getting smashed.
I forget who it was. But he went straight on against one of the big guys. Was it Ichinojo?
It might have been somebody like that, yeah.
He went straight on. I'm like, what are you doing? Is this a way to sort of, Terutsuyoshi trying leg moves and all this stuff. Enho's like, I'm just going to pretend I'm 100 pounds heavier than I am and just run into a brick wall. You got to wonder a couple of things. One, how affected is he by his training with Hakuho? Is Hakuho training with him right now? Is there a lot of extra pressure because Hakuho's in a bad mood? Hakuho's got his own career on the line. Maybe if he was the Oyakata, he'd be spending a certain amount of time with Enho. Ishihara's and Juryo. I think, the whole team's falling apart here. It's live or die by the team in that stable because Ishihara and Enho are the small guys. They really look to the big guy to help him out. So, I don't know if we're going to run into a situation where Enho hangs out in Juryo for a long time.
Well...
He looked pretty bad.
This was bad. He's been on the way down, too. So, last time we were we got to keep an eye on him. He's got to regroup. And then you lost it again and we're okay, this time, seriously. So, it's... Maybe Juryo will be the actual, the real... breath of fresh air and he'll be like, oh, I gotta perform. Or maybe he'll just wallow. There's no way of knowing.
It's so hard to watch a guy like him do all the amazing things he did and then just fall apart.
Yeah.
But that may be his sumo journey because he is a small guy. He looks like a child out there. And I'm not betting against him. But I'm sad. And I just don't know what's going to happen.
It was a rough time. Speaking of rough times, Yutakayama, 6-9. My note for him was tough luck, kid. Because Koto Eko, and Terutsuyoshi are the bad luck club. Mm-hmm. And that all three of them, it felt like if the world was spinning a half a mile slower, they would have won all their matches instead of lost them all. Now with Yutakayama, I can't help but feel, because he keeps losing the same way. And that he's winning, and then he overcommits, and then he's punished for it.
He falls on his face or out of the ring.
And now, how much of that is just tough luck? There were a couple of times that it was at the edge, and it was just this close, and so it's just it could have gone either way. But at the same time, maybe... Well, also, I was watching Hokuto Fuji. This is always what happened to Hokuto Fuji, is that he'd get a little overzealous, and then somebody would push him out, and then he'd go from winning to losing in a moment. And so I sort of equated that with Yutakayama because they have similar builds and abilities. And it just seemed that Yutakayama was always on that, always drew the short straw. But now I'm wondering, maybe if he does something with his footwork, gets a little better balance, maybe in those moments that he's going to lose, he gets to stay in an extra half second. I don't know.
I agree with you completely. I think there's something off about his footwork. They're all top heavy, but some guys, they got the big legs and the big frame. His legs are smaller. He's got this big upper body and these smaller legs. They're still huger than me, but he's a little top heavy. And so most of his losses are like his feet go out from under him or he flies out of the ring. There's just something not right. Now, he's always got the bandaged feet, the bandaged ankles. I don't know if injuries are part of this, but footwork and balance are totally off for him. But a little bit of the Enho thing, his head and his heart are like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
But his legs are going in a different direction than the rest of his body. I don't know if that's something that, he would assume he's very well aware of it, but it's like, how much of it can he control? Like, is an injury the issue? And if he just gets better, that'll be fixed? Or is it just, you got to keep reminding yourself, hey, I'm doing it again. Takekeisho has that too, by the way.
Yep.
When he overcommits, you see the feet sliding. He's got the top heaviness. The feet are going. You push too hard and the guy's not there. I see Yu Takayama losing in the same way. So hopefully it's not an injury and it's just something he can work on. Because
hopefully.
I think he's too good to be losing the way he's losing.
He's hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Enho may not be that hungry. It's hard to tell because when he wins, he's sort of just breathing. But whenever Yu Takayama wins, particularly near the end when things are a little more desperate, how they do the nod.
Oh yeah,
they do the nod. It's like, I want it. I can't cheer or celebrate. What I can do is do the slight little nod. Their headpiece shakes a little bit. Yu Takayama does that, so you can tell he wants it. He wants it desperately. And so really it's just a matter of, can he, like you said, can he control what's not there?
Mm-hmm.
So next up is Kaisei. 6-9. Definitely can't control, which is a problem here. And this is similar to Aoyama. Actually, the two of them fighting was hilarious because everything was super slow.
It was what am I watching?
Kaisei is definitely on the way down. And he will, when the match isn't at a breakneck speed, when he either has the advantage in the Tachiai or the opponent basically lets Kaisei do something, you can see that old Kaisei that is just impossible to move. Like the guy who won double-digit wins both times and only started losing once Hakuho just turned his gaze right at him.
You're like, ah!
But that's...
It might be the end for him. Not quite yet. It's not like tomorrow's the end, but it's like you're starting to see the decline. I hear Kaisei is the nice guy of sumo, so that's kind of a shame. Outside of the ring, he's pretty beast mode in the ring, but I hear he's the guy that people really like to hang out with. So
he looks fun.
Yeah, hopefully he can just keep it going. And I don't know how he feels about Juryo. Because he might be there after the next tournament.
Well, I think he'll stay up for January, but then if he loses again in January, he'll be on the down. But still fun to see him. We'll get at least one more tournament out of him for now, and hopefully he'll be back from Juryo. We'll see. Next up is Hoshoryu. So, in the same way that when I was writing down the scores, I was like, Tamawashi got 8-7? That's interesting. When I saw Hoshoryu got 7-8, I was like, what? I thought he won.
Yeah, it was close.
So it's sort of it's a lot of the things but flipped in that he had really good sumo. The way he was winning, he had these interesting techniques. He was definitely crisp. You could definitely tell this pressure was off of him. But then he lost 8 times. You're like, wait, when did he lose? And then you go through it, you're just like, oh yeah, he got outgunned there. He was a little overeager there. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's the new guy jitters. I would think. He's not going to go back. He's not going to go down to Juryo, so he's going to get a chance to start again. But he looked good in the last tournament, but wasn't his record only 8-7 in the last tournament? So this is just new guy jitters. Also Shuru might be smacking him around outside of the ring. I'm not sure. But he's doing the slow, it's a very slow progress. Some of these guys are like, I'm going to win the tournament the second I come up. Hoshoryu's sort of taking his time, learning his craft. He's probably going to be the guy killing everybody in 2 years or so. But
Yeah.
right now, he's just hanging in there.
Yeah, it was one of the strongest outing from somebody who lost.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside of maybe Wakataka Kage, like him, Hoshoryu, Koto, Shoho, a lot of these newer people, like they're winning, but like how some of the earlier bulk, a lot of them were a lot of pusher thrusters. You had Hokutofuji, you had Takakeisho, definitely, Utakayama, mostly. This newer group, there seems to be more grappling, more belt, more technique.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to see these clusters building, but...
Well, you wonder, is Hoshoryu 7-8 a win or a loss? Now, obviously it's a loss because it's a Makikoshi. But, some of these guys were like, it was almost a win for you. For Hoshoryu, what kind of pressure does he have, with the legacy and everything? Is this a loss for him, or is it seen as, he's new? I wonder. I wonder what the family dynamic is there.
Oh, very much. The legacy. Oh, that's going to be his problem.
His
forever.
whole career, yeah.
Basically, until he gets to Yokozuna, they'll be like, why aren't you Yokozuna yet?
Are you still here?
Are you still... Yeah. I was like, why Ozeki? Go Yokozuna.
Exactly.
Sorry
what do you mean you got to Ozeki faster than anybody ever? You're not Yokozuna yet? And when you're Yokozuna, you have to win every tournament. So,
Yeah.
it'll never end for him.
It'll never end. But, good enough that I think he will hopefully get it together in January to get that 8 or 9.
That New Year thing really inspires people.
It does.
It's like, you know what? We get rid of 2020. We move into 2021. It's like I'm fresh into the division again, and I'm going to start all over again. And you could be like, oh, no show, and just pull out this crazy record, in January, and we'll just forget all about this.
We'll see. So next up is Ichinojo, who was 8-7, and of note was 2-7 on day 9. Ichinojo is so weird because it seems that every day of the tournament he just woke up. He's just like, I'm gonna go fight, I guess, and then didn't really fight. The only person he was just after was Chiyonokuni, and then the win that he had against Aqua, Aqua tried to pull him backwards, and Ichinojo just fell on him. But then Ichinojo wakes up. He has 7 losses, and he's just like, it's go time.
I'm not going back down to Juryo.
I'm not going back down to Juryo.
Yeah, it's like Snorlax woke up, and, typically with him it's, today I'm on, tomorrow I'm off. Today I'm on, tomorrow I'm off. But every once in a while he pulls one of these where it's like, I don't feel like wrestling. Oh, I could be demoted. Okay, I'm going to wrestle.
I'm going to wrestle.
And I knew he was going to do it, as a matter of fact. You could see it after he got to 7. It's like, no, he's probably going to get Kachikoshi. This is how he operates. I missed him. I hope he stays up in the upper division,
He's fun.
for a lot of time, because he is a fun guy, and I love big man sumo. I love all sumo. But you like to classify these different things. When Ichinojo's in there, he's the biggest guy in sumo. And I love seeing him go up against Tochinoshin. I like seeing him in Tokushoryu. I want to see the big guys battle it out. So get your act together, Ichinojo.
Well,
he won't.
Maybe get your act together before 7 losses.
Yeah, can you wake up for a little while? Can you do what you did in that one tournament where you could have won, but they wouldn't let you fight Hakuho?
He was 14-1, and the only reason he didn't win is because Hakuho was 15-0.
They should not have done him dirty like that.
Oh, man.
That's just so wrong. And Hakuho and Ichinojo have some sort of beef. Because there was one match where Hakuho beat Ichinojo, and then he did one of those after slaps to knock him off the ring. I'm like, something's going on there. That Mongolian, mafia thing.
But, well done, Ichinojo. I guess whatever it takes to get to 8. It can't be wrong.
Yeah.
Next up, Chiyonokuni, back from the depths. 10-5 on his way back in.
2.5 years, and I had been following him, looking for him, hoping he would come back, because when I first started watching, he was there, and he was so impressive. And it's like, where are you? Where have you gone? And he's from the infamous Chiyonofuji stable. I believe Chiyonofuji was still alive when Chiyonokuni made the upper division. So, for me, that's a very interesting dynamic. I hope Chris does a video on it, or if he has done one in the past, I can take a look. he might be the kind of guy who has some internal pressure himself, because that's a stable with like one of the heroes of Japanese sumo. You know, what kind of pressure does he have? I mean, he was all taped up, all beat up, and he fought like a warrior. He got 10-5. I hope he can just stay together and really put in a run, because I have missed him.
Yeah. He was willing to scrap too. Like somebody who has that much tape on them, you almost sense that there's a little bit of trepidation. Nah.
No, he's like, I'm doing this.
He's doing this. If he swung back, he'd get the belt, he'd do whatever it took. It was good to see. He made it look good. And he got the Fighting Spirit prize.
He was Ikioi, if Ikioi could win matches anymore.
Oh, God.
I love you. I'm sorry.
Oh, Ikioi. Oh.
Sorry, I brought it down again.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine.
Right.
It's just part of the sport. They hurt the ones you love.
Yeah. Every once in a while.
Every once in a while. So, next up we have Kota Waka, another newbie. He was 7-8. Interestingly enough, his last match was up against Wakataka Kage, who was 6-8, and he was 7-7. And I was like, that's an interesting matchup, because here's a guy in 14 who needs a win, and they put him up against the guy who's at 1, and then Wakataka Kage beats him, which is also an interesting show, because usually that guy, when you've already got your Makakoshi, you're just like,
whatever.
But Wakataka Kage kept it together. Kota Waka, I think they mentioned something about him being injured. Everybody's injured. He's also newer, and like you can sort of like Hoshoryu, he's got the nerves. Like, this is Kota Waka's second time up here.
Right.
But I don't think he's gotten fully used to it yet.
He's not a mainstay like Tokushoryu is right now. He needs a little more time, and he needs fine-tune the technique, as long as, you know, you're not injured. Like, seriously injured, like not coming back from it. So, he's another guy. You put a question mark like, maybe January he'll look really different.
We'll see. He was 7-8 still, not bad though.
No. I don't think you can be too upset about it. I mean, if you were going to get demoted, I'd be upset about it, but he's low enough down and he's not going to get demoted. So, you know, you just give it another go.
Give it another go. Next up, Chiyotairyu, 9-6. His smaller weight did seem to affect his Tachi-ai a little bit.
That's powerful.
He's had his blast Tachi-ai moments in this tournament where he just hit somebody and he went absolutely flying.
You hear it.
Yeah. There's not many sounds like it. But it seems that a lot of what caused Chiyotairyu to get those 9 wins was sort of a grit and the veteran experience, just having the better ring sense, the better footwork, more than it was the strong Tachi-ai that he was known for.
And it's interesting because he was known for that strong Tachi-ai, and that's like his signature thing. But he was starting to lose, even with the strong Tachi-ai. So I guess he's somebody who had to try to make an adjustment. And I'm glad he got 9-6, because I think he has more work to do. Mm-hmm. Because now he's lost the thing he's known for. What do you do with that? How do you win if that's what you've been trying to win with? But it wasn't working. So we'll see. I think 9-6 is encouraging that he can right the ship and he can work with his smaller frame and still get the power. But he needs a little more practice in actual tournaments. You know, you can only do so much in practice. So January will be interesting for him too. I'm not gonna guess as to what's gonna happen there.
No, he'll be high enough up so that if he does have a misstep, he'll have a cushion,
which is important.
Yeah, but
for trying and changing your sumo. Yeah,
he's on the way to wherever he's going. It seems.
Yeah.
So next up, real quick, Toyuki was in Megashira 15 West. He sat out the tournament. He had knee surgery?
Yes.
So he didn't fight, so he didn't win. Because he didn't win, he'll be back in Juryo. It seemed that his getting into the top division was kind of the happy accident.
Yeah, and now it's already done.
He's been here before. Maybe like other people who had those surgeries, that just the committing to the surgery and to the healing is going to extend his life a little bit. If nothing else, hopefully it means that his life outside of sumo is not horrendous.
Right. I mean, you have to consider, especially Koto Yuki's not a young guy, you've got to consider, like, do you want to spend the next 50 years of your, maybe not 50, 30 years of your life in absolute agony every day? You do come to a point where you got to make those kinds of decisions.
But maybe we'll see him again. If nothing else, healthy recovery. Next up, we have Chiyo Shoma. He is somebody who has been in the top division in the past. Spent a long tenure in Juryo. Finally got his way back up to the top division. And got 8-7, so he gets to stick around for a little bit longer. He's fun to watch because he is shifting all the time.
All the time.
He's always just galloping left to right. And, like, every once in a while he'll go at you straight. But, like, once he gets going after the tachiai, he's always looking for an angle. And not a lot of people do it, at least to the speed and consistency he does. He's also crafty. He'll do henkas and stuff like that. He doesn't. There's a few moments of no honor.
He's a fox, like the kind of fox where it's like you don't know that you're gonna get a straight up situation with him. He is gonna bite you right in the ankle.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a big man, but he's not a small man. But he does small man sumo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very interesting to see someone of his size do the same kinds of things as some of these smaller dudes like Teretsuyoshi. And he's not ashamed. He doesn't care.
No, he doesn't.
He'll hanka you 3 times in a row.
Yeah, he'll do something dishonorable and then he'll be like, I won.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to be, like, phased when he does that. And nobody should feel like you did me wrong because everybody knows that's what he does.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so it's shifty, but at the same time, you know what's coming. So prepare yourself.
Prepare yourself.
Congratulations for coming back. Hopefully you stick around for a while, because it's been years now.
Been a while, yeah. Long, long while. I don't know if his sumo will get him very far up.
Yeah.
But if he gets 8-7, if he's able to build, and maybe being back in the spotlight will get him to sort of tighten those screws and lug nuts a little bit. We'll see.
You always wonder, like, some of these guys who don't have any pressure on them at all, they're just doing their thing.
Mm-hmm.
If they could, maybe that's why these, like, low man on the totem pole keeps winning the tournaments. You just win every day.
Yeah.
No pressure, whatever happens. Maybe Chiyo Shoma's that kind of guy.
We'll see. And so the whole dark horse thing, now that it's viable, it's so fun.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I gotta be like, oh, maybe Chiyo no Kuni gets that Yusha. Actually, he'll be high up later, but he was in it for a while too. Actually, not to mention it. Anyway, Chiyo Shoma, good to see you again. The newcomer, Aqua, who was more of a veteran, but this is the first time in the top division. So I read up on him. There was like, he's a pusher thruster, good solid base, and so I'm thinking, the Hokuto Fuji type. He starts doing belt stuff. I'm like,
what is going on here?
Dear Internet, come on.
You're selling me a bad deal.
What is going on? So he started out rocky, like 0-3, 0-4. I was just like, oh, well, good to see you. But then he righted the ship and started like doing belt throws. It was amusing because there was one day that he won on a belt throw and he was like, wow, that's really good. He goes right for the belt throw the next day and it was on somebody who knew what he was doing and they just threw him out. And I was just like, oh, well.
I can't.
He can't do it every time. But 9-6. For his first outing, is a very good show.
It's very impressive.
He was fun to watch. He had it's some more big man sumo.
Yes.
Some heft. And I want to see what this guy can do because he's new to me.
I wanna mention also, came from Kursumo. The guy gets into a car accident and then goes into the ring and fights right after the car accident, wins his match, and then goes to the hospital.
Yeah.
And his response was something along the lines of, you just gotta do what you gotta do. Okay, I'm impressed. It was probably really dangerous. You probably shouldn't do things like that, but wow.
Yeah.
You're a tough guy.
Tough guy, yeah. Get in a car accident and just like, oh, I have whiplash, but I'll fight.
Yeah, I think wrestling in a sumo ring is like the last thing you should do with whiplash, but he did it.
He did it!
And he said something along the lines of, yeah, I felt real good after that hospital treatment. I'm like, what? I recommend you watch the video. I'm amused and horrified But he's okay, so I'm mostly amused.
Mostly amused. Everything went out well. It was a happy ending story, so it could be a little scary.
Yeah, let's just be happy about it.
So, last but certainly not least, and honestly, we should have seen this coming because
course.
This is the person on the lowest rung, but Shimanomi, who's been under our radar this whole time.
We've had pretty much nothing to say about him, which I feel really surprised and shocked by this.
Out of nowhere, goes from, oh yeah, that guy's about to fall into Jurio, to 11-1, and tussling with Terunofuji and Takakeisho for the tournament. Ended up 11-4, basically, to give him the murderer's row, just to sort of put the nail in that coffin. But he has sort of woken everyone up who was sleeping on Shimanomi. And I for one, went in every day and I'm like, no, this
can't happen again.
I saw Kaisei, he just folded after 8 days. And then he just kept winning. And he kept doing well. And it seems that he's got this strong push game. But a lot of the things that he was winning was just his ability to outlast. And not like in an endurance way, like with Takarafuji, that they just absorb everything. But like he's getting knocked around, but he's able to stay in. He's staggering on the edge, or he's just sort of bracing himself. And now I was just like, this guy was quietly a tough guy.
And we didn't know.
And I personally feel terrible because I just overlooked the grit.
I had no, it's one of those things where you talk about sort of the luck thing and sort of the everything aligning properly. It looks like he always had what it took to, put in a really good result, but it just wasn't working out. So he was like under the radar. But when he lost the Takakeisho, the look on his face, you could just see the passion. You could see how much he wanted it. And I thought to myself, this is going to be a very interesting new year because I think he's going to build off of it. So going from I don't know who this guy is, to almost, I won't say almost winning the tournament, but staying in it till the very end. And then just seeing it slip away and seeing how much he wanted it. I don't know. It's always tricky because Hakuho's coming back. Once again, he really defines how a tournament's going to go. But I think there may be a lot of hope for him in the future because of that grit and because he had success with it. Success will train you in its own way. Yes.
So he got the Fighting Spirit prize along with Shironokuni. For the record, the Technique prize went to Terunofuji. So you had mentioned before about how Shodai sort of got his stuff together when he could sort of see the cup. Mm-hmm. I can't help but think that Shimanomi may have something along those lines too, knowing that he was now, to be fair, he had to get through Takarafuji, Terunofuji, and Takakeisho to win, which, to be fair, if you're not fighting them for the cup, then who should you be fighting? But at the same time, 17 East goes up against Takakeisho.
Right, in his top form.
Oh, man, rough. But Shimanomi's definitely got to be taking a nice hike up the Banzuke.
How far do you think he'll go?
Single digits. So 9, maybe?
That'd be interesting.
Maybe. I mean, he could be like 11-10 too, but they could lean into his performance a little higher. We'll see.
Well, when you get a Fighting Spirit prize, it might add a little extra cred.
Add a little spin. But, yeah, that was not expected, and definitely a great spin to a great tournament.
But I'll say this. It has been fun this year seeing all of these, low man on the totem pole come back and win. But because it's happened so much, it was really nice to see the top guys be the ones who are battling it out in the end and sort of swatting Shimanoumi away. Not because I have anything against him, but it's you want to see the top guys perform like the top guys. And we knew very early on in the middle of the tournament that it was going to come down to Takakeisho and Terunofuji. Mm-hmm. And I really didn't want to see anybody come in and interrupt that because that's just happened too much this year. And it's time to see the top guys be the top guys again. So I hope that he's going to work his way up into that top thing. He's not going to be a one-off. But at the same time, I'm glad the tournament turned out the way it did. And congratulations to everyone. And apparently Takakeisho got married right before the November tournament. So
couldn't hurt.
Congratulations on getting married.
So And I guess ending it on a little bit of a downer, but we can talk for a little bit after this, just to not be on a downer. Koto Shogiku has retired. Formally, we were hoping that he would go down to Juryo, get his stuff back, and then come back up. Because that was definitely his plan. I'm guessing that he started losing a lot, and then he realized that it wasn't the injury that kept him down before, and he said, just gave it up.
It's really a shame because he was headed towards something, at least mentally, before that injury. Like, he was headed towards maybe achieving some of those smaller goals. And then the injury just said, that's it, you're done. And that right there is sort of the beauty and the horror of sumo, isn't it? You can fight and fight and fight your whole career, but at some point, it's going to end, and it might not always be on your terms.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm sad that he had to retire, but I'm glad that he knew when the time was right. You know, that he didn't spend a lot of time in Juryo getting frustrated. It would have been nice to see him, you know, end getting some other records, but just unfortunately wasn't in the cards, and I'll miss seeing him. I liked the Bumpity. I didn't start watching when he was Ozeki, so I didn't get to see his glory years, but you always saw that spirit was still in there.
Mm-hmm.
You could see, of course, he was an Ozeki. So, you know, it's going to be hard for a little bit, but it'll be nice to see him as an Oyakata. I think he's going to end up training some of the best.
Yeah, and Koto Shoho, Koto Eko, what other Kotos? Koto Nowaka, Koto Yuki. Those are all people who are going to directly benefit from his help now.
Right. I mean, now he has all the time to work with them, and there is a nice thing of the changing of the guard in the sense that Koto Shogiku is going out, but he can be a part of the next generation. You know, when you're in it with them, you don't have the time to spend with them, you miss out on something. It's like, it's just the natural transition, you know, to the next thing you're going to do. And before you know it, he'll be known as like the best Oyakata that's ever been. He's trained the most Yokozuna or something like that. And you'll forget about his Ozeki days the way you think about him now.
Maybe. Well, this is what's going to be really interesting in 20 years or so. When this entire Banzuke is just all people that haven't even been born yet. Or haven't even done a lick of sumo. And it'll be tearing it up.
They might be
and then
grandchildren of people.
Yep.
And
Then you have Chairman Hakuo
yeah, I
sitting
know.
around. Like, this is the future for us.
Him and Kakadu just like, let me tell you what we're going to do today.
So that's the future we have to look forward to. We gotta wait through it. And quite frankly, I am going to have enough time waiting for January to have to worry about anything else.
Yeah, exactly. 20 years from now.
Oh, goodness. But yeah, this was a great tournament. Lots of stories. A lot of positive, more positive than negative. Only a couple of negative that there's no hope in them.
Yeah, this wasn't one of those tournaments where it's like so many people's dreams got crushed.
Yeah.
There was a few. There was Enho and Koto Shogiku probably being the saddest of the stories. But most people performed well enough to fight another day. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to throw the question out there to you. Do you think Takakeisho is going to become Yokozuna in the near future?
So is the criteria back-to-back Yushos to become Yokozuna?
It is.
So
he would have to win in January.
He'd have to win in January.
And then there might be some consideration too. Like, chances are if he wins convincingly in January, they would give it to him. But if it's like a shaky win, they might say, you gotta wait a little longer. They did that to him for Ozeki. So.
They did. In January, it's gonna be the great test. So this was definitely, the question was gonna be, who in the Sanyaku were gonna prove their mettle now that the top guys are gone. Top guys are coming back in January. So now the question is, can you all play with the big dogs when mom is home?
Right.
It will. So, considering how crazy this year's been with trying to predict things, you would think that just, one Hakuho will just great equalizer. It will be great if Hakuho gets a bit of shine taken off of him. And so, this would be the moment to have Takakeisho go back-to-back and get that belt. The thing is that in January, there's going to be a lot of people who are Like this, a lot of people here, like the theme for this one was very much like it was proving of themselves, but it was more of like an honor and a pride thing. Mm-hmm. It was a sort of a positive spin. It was like, let me show you what I can do. In January, there's going to be an executioner sharpening his axe, like right off the dohyo. It's just like, it's not I got to prove myself for the glory. It's got to prove myself or there will be consequences.
I have such mixed feeling. I'll say this. If Taka Keisho goes in, wins the Yusho with Hakuho and Kakadu in there, and he beats these guys,
he's got to have it.
He's going to have it. Because here's another thing. Asanayama and Shodai are going to be worried about clearing Kadoban. They're not worried about winning Yushos necessarily.
That's a good point.
They're always going to be.
They're always going to be. Yeah.
This is the moment. This is really the moment right here. If he's going to take it early in his career, that's not to say he couldn't just be Ozeki for a while. This is his moment. I think he knows it. He said, if I'm strong, I'll win. If I'm weak, I'll lose.
I love that mantra from him.
It's the best. I loved it.
Well, he said it. He said it when he was going to fight Shimanoumi. They're like, you got to beat this guy. And Takakesu was just like, if I'm strong, I'll win. If I'm weak, I'll lose. I'm just like, this guy is just, he's facing it head on.
And that mental thing is what he's got over a lot of guys.
A lot of guys.
I mean, sumo has been his whole life since he was very young. And he's single-minded. And we will see what happens. I would love it. And I would hate it. I would love it for him to become Yokozuna if he really is convincing, because that would be awesome. But once you become Yokozuna, that's it.
That's it.
You can't get hurt. You can't lose. And he's only 24 years old. Mm-hmm. So,
but
we'll see what happens.
For now, congratulations, well done, and an epic conclusion to a weird-ass year of sumo.
Yeah. This is the weirdest year any of us have ever seen.
A lot of things weird this one. But that'll be it for us for now. Thank you for watching.
See you later.